Number 92, the paralysis of analysis, also procrastination, and the Nirvana fallacy. A postmodern fallacy that since all data is never in, any conclusion is always provisional, no legitimate decision can ever be made, and any action should always be delayed until forced by circumstances, a corruption of the argument from logos. See also the law of unintended consequences. I'm trying to understand this one. I'm kind of lost on that one, to be honest.
If I'm understanding correctly, it's literally the idea of consistently passing around, like essentially making a blowing up the idea that when data is passed around, data can never be, or science can never be 100% correct, and
Oh,
therefore
okay.
no decision can be made as a result of this data because there's other data to support it that something can't be done. Well, that can't be done because of this data, and that can't be done because of this data, and then back and forth to infinity, and nothing's ever finished.
Basically, I think pretty much nailed it. Because in any scientific theory, you could have all the data in the world saying this positive conclusion is most likely true, but there's no such data that could possibly exist to say that that is absolutely true. You could only get consistent beyond reasonable doubt. And so for a lot of people, if there isn't absolute certainty in the positive, they'll be like, well, we don't know for sure. Therefore, we shouldn't make any decisions on that, which is not productive in society because you don't live for eternity to wait for an absolute answer. You only live like, I don't know, like 80 years or so. So you should probably like take best shot you got with the evidence that you have. That being said, you can have absolute evidence in the negative, though. You can have positive certainty of something being impossible. When evidence contradicts a hypothesis, then it is logically it's the second law of logic where you can't have contradicting pieces of evidence. So if that's the case, you do know for certain that something can be impossible. But if things line up, you can never be 100% certain that you are not to some degree guilty of confirmation bias.
Yeah.
But if the hypothesis remains falsifiable and you still attempt to prove it wrong, and every single time it comes up correct, then you can say, all right, this is most likely true. This is consistent beyond reasonable doubt. Um, yeah, I think that's all this fallacy is. I think it's pretty vague because I'm sure this is probably one of those fallacies that can be like an umbrella fallacy where a lot of different fallacies fall within to this one, like I guess the law of unintended consequences. Oh,
Yeah.
because it's like we can't make the decision because if we make the decision, then there could be all these unintended consequences that come from that. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've
Cool.
definitely I haven't used this one recently, but I have used this one many times in my life, and the justification for it at the time was either job or authority preservation. So it was I would use it in situations where it was like a decision would be made, and I would feel threatened by the fact that a decision was made that I didn't come up with. And so then it was like, ooh, let's put in this information that contradicts the decision and stops the decision to make it look as though I added something productive to this conversation. And so I've definitely, in those two instances, for a preservation of authority and a preservation of a position at a company when I used to be in corporate, I would do this often.
Was, would you say that that behavior was, um, oh, what is it called? When the devil's advocate, would you say it's the devil's advocate or would you say it's something else that you did?
Sure, devil's advocate for sure, but are those two separate things, two separate foul? Because
Well,
if
well, yeah, well, I was asking, like, are you describing something different than devil's advocate? Because I would argue that devil's advocate is part of science. That, like, if somebody comes up with something, they have a hypothesis. And so to be the devil's advocate would be to hold it up to scrutiny, to test it, to make sure it's a reasonable thing to do. I do that all the time. You should do that. You shouldn't just be like, oh, new idea, bravo, let's just do it. Like you should, like, well, just double check. Because if it holds up to scrutiny, then you could be even more confident that that was a great idea.
True. Yeah, I'm looking at this here. It says the big part that I think hones in on what this actually is: no legitimate decision can ever be made, and any action should always be delayed until forced by circumstances. So it's like it's the argument that nothing should ever be done. So, oh, that's interesting. Hang on, let me just like, yeah, I've maybe I had
And then
something.
oh, sorry, I was gonna say the forced by consequences thing is actually another fallacy, but I don't want to interrupt your thought.
Yeah, it's just forced by circumstances. Um, then maybe I haven't used this one. Now that I think about it, I've never used data. I've used data to try to preserve to stop decisions from being made to preserve my position and authority. But I've never used data to promote the idea that we should never make a decision unless forced by circumstances. That I've never done. So,
Yeah.
because that's to me, that wouldn't make any sense. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, the forced by circumstance, like that is, it's really, really bad to do that because that's I think it's like we have to do something is the fallacy, or something like that. But it's like you you get to a point where you have no choice but to make a decision. And it's like you shouldn't wait until then. Like make a plan. Like it's just a really bad idea.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah. Like wait until the hurricane comes to do something about it.
Really dumb. Really dumb.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.